Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Brendan Steinhauser, and I am the Chief Strategy Officer for Young Americans for Liberty. I also have a master's degree in statecraft and international affairs from the Institute of World Politics in Washington, where I specialized in American foreign policy. I've taught as an adjunct professor of political science and global studies at St. Edward's University as well. I've studied the history of American foreign policy in great detail, both our successes and our failures. I also serve in the Texas State Guard, which is a Title 32 state defense force that works closely with the National Guard in Texas on emergency response, homeland security, and homeland defense. I'm proud to serve my fellow Texans in this capacity, and I'm proud to work alongside so many great troops and airmen. These are citizen soldiers who have families, careers, and many other obligations outside of their military service. I wanted to note today that I'm speaking on my own behalf and not that of the Texas State Guard, nor the Texas Military Department. I support LD 1054, Defend the Guard, in Maine and in every state, because I believe it's the best way to prevent our troops from being sent overseas to fight unconstitutional and unnecessary wars. Our founding fathers feared standing armies and the use of military force for political ends that were not in our national interests. And history has shown that their fears were prescient. On today, the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, it is fitting that we are considering Defend the Guard. The Second Iraq War was never a declared war, and Congress is just now getting around to repealing its authorization 20 years later. The Afghanistan War was also never a declared war by Congress. And although our troops did their duty valiantly and attempted to achieve their military and political goals, the war ended in failure and tragedy. The open-ended nature of both of these conflicts made it very difficult to wind them down across administrations and to bring our troops home to their families. That is just one of the many lessons that we should learn from this tragic period in our nation's foreign policy history. American President John Quincy Adams once said, quote, "America goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy," end quote. But our history has shown that we do so more often than we should. Sometimes we get caught up in patriotic fervor or territorial expansion and even revenge. In order to constrain those sentiments that can easily get whipped up into a frenzy, we need to impose constraints on ourselves. That is why we must require that for National Guard troops to be sent abroad into combat, Congress must first declare war. That is a constitutional, responsible, and practical restraint that we can impose so that our citizen soldiers and airmen are not sent abroad in search of monsters to destroy. And if future wars are to be declared by Congress, then they should be constitutional, just, and clearly in our national security interests.
Mr.
Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Oh, great. Your perfect timing. Appreciate that very much. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Steinhauser? Chair recognizes Representative Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony here today. Would you consider, quote, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, end quote, as faulty intelligence?
Absolutely. It was faulty intelligence. In fact, Mike Morrell, who is a former acting director of the CIA, said it was a failure both in terms of collection and of analysis. And it was probably the primary reason for the invasion of Iraq. There were a number listed, but the intelligence on WMDs was absolutely faulty.